already walking north from Honduras ahead of schedule. It is a move that's adding more fuel to the fire in the stalemate over border wall funding. Trace has the latest on this new caravan in moments. And breaking tonight, the president pushes back as Democrats plan new moves over a report suggesting the commander-in-chief concealed details about his meetings with Russian President Putin. Tonight, you're going to hear from a former top aide to the president's national security advisor. He's got firsthand knowledge of those meetings between Trump and Putin, so stick around. Plus, we'll take you to Wisconsin for an in-depth report into the kidnapping of 13-year-old Jamie Kloss. The suspect in court today for the first time, revealing horrifying details of his alleged plot. Hello and welcome to Fox News at Night. I'm Shannon Bream in Washington. We've got Fox team coverage tonight. Trace Gallagher following the new migrant caravan. Chad Pergram on Capitol Hill with breaking new details on Congressman Steve King's controversy. But we begin with correspondent Kristen Fisher and signs. Democrats are planning aggressive new moves when it comes to attempts to link President Trump and Russia. Good evening, Kristen.
Good evening, Shannon. Yeah, that's right. These newly empowered House Democrats are once again considering subpoenaing the interpreter who was in the room for President Trump's private meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Now, they first tried to do this right after that summit in Helsinki, but it didn't work because Republicans were in control. Now Democrats are in charge of these committees, and this new Washington Post report is reopening that effort. Congressman Adam Schiff says last year we sought to obtain the interpreter's notes or testimony from the private meeting between Trump and Putin. The Republicans on our committee voted us down. Will they join us now? Shouldn't we find out whether our president is really putting America first? Now, the Post reported that there is no detailed record, even in classified files, of President Trump's face-to-face meetings with Putin. But the most explosive detail is that after their first meeting in Hamburg in 2017, the report claims President Trump took his own interpreter's notes and told the interpreter not to discuss what had been said with other administration officials. Over the weekend, President Trump told Fox's Jeanine Pirro that he'd be open to sharing those notes. But when he was asked about it again today, here's what he said.
I just don't know anything about it. I read it this morning. It's a lot of fake news. That was a very good meeting. It was actually a very successful meeting. Talked about many subjects, but I have those meetings one-on-one with all leaders, including the president of China, including Prime Minister of Japan, Abe. We have those meetings all the time. No big deal.
But Democrats like Senator Mark Warner say it is highly unusual, if not unprecedented, for a president's own advisors to be kept in the dark.
Why wouldn't the President of the United States want to share, at least with his closest advisors, what he's saying with someone who I think most Americans would agree is a rival, if not an adversary, in the form of Vladimir Putin, particularly since we now have bipartisan consensus, at least from the Intelligence Committee, that Russians and Russian agents tried to interfere in the 2016 election in an effort to help Trump and hurt Clinton.
White House senior advisor Kellyanne Conway believes the reason may be that President Trump was worried about his own advisors leaking information to the press.
The president at that time in 2017 was suffering from a great number of leaks. As you remember, I think week 1 or 2 of being here, his calls with the leaders of Mexico and Australia had leaked.
Now, if Democrats do decide to subpoena the interpreter, there's concern that it could set a dangerous precedent. The thinking is that it might prevent future presidents from speaking freely in these high-level meetings with other world leaders if they're worried that their interpreter could get called before Congress, Shannon.
Good point. All right, Kristen, we will debate that. Thank you very much. Joining us now, former Chief of Staff to the National Security Advisor John Bolton, Fred Fleitz, and the Washington Examiner's Chief Political Correspondent Byron York. Gentlemen, welcome to you both.
Good to be here.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's start with this issue that the president is trying to hide something when it comes to meetings with Putin. Stephen Collinson says this: if Trump doesn't have anything to hide, why does he hide Putin interactions from his own staff? Goes on to say, if, as the White House says, Trump has no compromised relationship with Russia, why does he go out of his way to hide his interactions with Putin? Does he perhaps not trust his own team not to leak details of their meetings? Fred, is he hiding details from senior officials?
No, Shannon, this story has really spun out of control. And I can say as a former executive secretary and chief of staff of the National Security Council that the president's senior staff knew everything. Everything in the meeting in Germany between Putin and the president, everything in the meeting in Helsinki between the president and Putin. The real issue here is that the president took extraordinary measures to stop leaks And officials in this government, that is the deep state, who wanted to leak this information, they're the people who were talking to the Washington Post and trying to create this fake news story. This information was not concealed from the president's senior advisors.
Okay, one of the top Democrats in the Senate, Dick Durbin, had this to say about the notes in question. Here's what he says.
When he takes the interpreter's notes and wants to destroy them so no one can see what was said in written transcript, it raises serious questions about the relationship between this president and Putin.
Brian, what about that? Because now we're hearing from lawmakers that some of them want to subpoena and get their hands on the interpreter and or the notes.
I believe the incident recounted in the Post about the interpreter's notes was from the meeting in Hamburg. And if you saw when the camera pulled out of the meeting in Hamburg, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, then the Secretary of State, was sitting there, and he talked to other officials about it. I think Fred what Fred is saying is right, is that inside the administration, after a couple of really spectacular leaks, Kellyanne Conway referred to them, conversations between the president and the head of state in Mexico and Australia. These were leaked. These are not leaked. This is the kind of stuff that is not leaked. So the idea that the president would then tighten the circle of people who have access to transcripts of these calls, maybe dozens or hundreds had access before, and he tightens it up, that's entirely understandable.
Well, in the meantime, there's this conversation about whether or not the president was acting as a Russian agent in some way, specifically with respect to firing former FBI Director James Comey. Here's what Congresswoman Maxine Waters, a Democrat, has to say about that. She says, Americans should be shaken by what we know of Trump and Putin's relationship and should not be surprised by the FBI counterintelligence investigation. Is Trump a Russian agent? If it walks like a duck and talks like a duck, then it is a duck and the duck should be impeached. Fred, if I follow that, she's saying the president is a Russian agent.
Well, where's the evidence of this? This is just, we hear this over and over from the Democrats, and there's no evidence of this. Now, it's pretty clear Warner tried to imply this concerning these two meetings with Putin.
On the Sunday shows.
But keep in mind that Secretary of State Tillerson was in the first meeting, and I doubt the president would have said such ridiculous things in the presence of Tillerson. And the second meeting was carefully communicated to senior officials. Everyone knows what was discussed in Helsinki, and I'm one of them. I know what was discussed in Helsinki, and it was a discussion that I think was entirely appropriate. It was not concealed from senior officials.
Final word to you, Byron.
On this FBI thing, I asked a Republican today who was involved in this, knowledgeable about this, is this story more about what President Trump did or more about what the FBI did? He said, definitely the FBI. This is actually extraordinary. We know all of the suspicions that were raised in the public discussion in 2016 and early 2017. And what's clear is in the 2 or 3 days after the May 9th, 2017 firing of James Comey, the FBI just has a complete collective nervous breakdown. These people, the top officials there, they freak out. This is when Rod Rosenstein apparently talks about wearing a wire to secretly record the president. They talk about the 25th Amendment. They talk about starting a counterintelligence investigation. And it takes them a while to calm down. Mueller is appointed and he takes this over. But this is really, I think, a portrait of what's going on inside the FBI more than what the president is doing.
Well, it raises a lot of questions in that respect. Byron and Fred, thank you both for being here.
Good to be here.
All right, this is a Fox News alert. The party of Lincoln says it will not tolerate comments about white supremacy from within its own ranks. And the GOP is moving against Congressman Steve King of Iowa. But is the Republican Party going far enough to silence critics on both the right and left? Let's check in with senior Capitol Hill producer Chad Pergram live on the Hill tonight with the newest moves against the congressman. Hey, Chad.
Shannon, in the previous Congress, Republican Iowa Congressman Steve King served on the Agriculture Committee, the Judiciary Committee, and the Small Business Committee, but no more.
We made a decision tonight that Steve King will not be serving on committees in this Congress. I think it sends clear across the country about how serious the Republican Party believes that all men and women are created equal.
Now, here's the reason why Republicans are so concerned. Look at the midterm elections. They did not perform well with minority voters. Look at the diversity of the House Democratic Caucus, the freshman class that came in, women, Muslims, minorities, Native Americans, a lot of white men in the Republican conference here. Now, Steve King, he met with House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy. Here's part of his statement after that session tonight. He said, McCarthy's decision to remove me from committees is a political decision that ignores the truth. I told him, you do what you have to do, and I will do what I have to do. Now, there are three official modes of sanction in the House of Representatives. There's reprimand, there's censure, and there's expulsion. Now, Jim Clyburn, the Democratic whip, he is introducing a resolution of disapproval where the House of Representatives tomorrow would disapprove of these remarks by Steve King. This is a similar tactic that Clyburn initiated in 2009 when Joe Wilson, the Republican congressman from South Carolina, heckled President Obama on the House floor. Now, Bobby Rush is a Democratic congressman from Illinois. He doesn't think that this goes far enough. He has introduced a censure resolution. Listen to Congressman Rush.
If I could reprimand him, or better still, if I could take him in the alley and show him physically who's superior, I would. But that would mean that I would be brought down to his level.
Now, there's only been a few times that they have actually censured people here in Congress, 23 to be specific, the last being Charlie Rangel in December of 2010. The House can adjudicate all of its members. It would take a full House vote, but we're expecting at a minimum this resolution of disapproval on the House floor tomorrow. That takes a 2/3 vote, Shannon.
All right, Chad, thank you very much for working late with us. Great to see you, and we'll discuss this with the panel coming up. Thanks for having us. Another Fox News alert now. Governments from Guatemala City to Mexico City and here in Washington, all watching the movements of a brand new caravan. President Trump warning those governments they must do more this time to stop the caravan in its tracks before it's too late. Trace Gallagher is on the case for us tonight. Hello, Trace.
Hi, Shannon. The latest caravan was supposed to leave Honduras at dawn tomorrow morning, but we have just been notified it is now on the move, and we have the pictures to prove it. We don't have exact numbers of how many migrants are heading north, but a Guatemala journalist estimates about 1,000, meaning it is smaller than previous caravans. But the direction is expected to be the same, first through Guatemala, then into southern Mexico and on to the U.S. border with Mexico. It's unclear who might be organizing or compelling Central Americans to make this trip, or if the caravan is aware that previous asylum seekers have largely gotten stuck in Mexico. Today, a representative for the U.S. Embassy traveled to the Guatemala border to inform the migrants not to, quote, invest time and money in a journey that is destined to fail. But for many of those determined to go, it is the U.S. or bust. Watch.
La esperanza es ir a trabajar.
The hope is to go and work, if I can. I know I will find work. I know there is work. Most people I know are heading over there because that's where they see their future. There is no future here.
Yeah. Others say they plan to travel with children, believing it will increase their odds of getting into the U.S. But the migrants could initially face resistance from their own governments. The embattled presidents of both Honduras and Guatemala are very eager to maintain the support of the Trump administration, meaning the money. And today, the president made it clear that support is in jeopardy. Listen.
So those days are over. So I said just before I came, we're looking at a whole plan. Why are we sending them money if they're allowing caravans to form right in the middle of their cities?
The president went on to say the migrants won't be stopped by drones or sensors, but they would be stopped by a, quote, nice, powerful wall. And he's not backing away from the $5.7 billion he wants to build that structure, and so goes the partial government shutdown. So now that the caravan has left, that puts them in southern Mexico around 10 days from now. And Mexico's new president, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, has vowed to treat the migrants more humanely than the previous administration has done. Shannon.
All right, Trace Gallagher, thank you very much. Well, over the weekend, the president tweeting immigrant crime data from the state of Texas. Well, now there's plenty of dispute over those numbers. So let's bring in the Attorney General of Texas, Ken Paxton, to set the record straight. And Angel mom, Sabina Durden, her son Dominic, was killed by an illegal immigrant. We welcome you both tonight. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I want to read a little bit of this. The president tweeted this. He says the Trump portrait, he's quoting someone talking about him, of an unstable border crisis is dead on. In the last 2 years, ICE officers made 266,000 arrests of aliens with criminal records, including those charged or convicted of 100,000 assaults, 30,000 sex crimes, and 4,000 violent killings. But Mr. Attorney General, I want to contrast that with something we got from Cato. They say, we estimate that native-born Texans had a first-time criminal conviction rate of 683 per 100,000 natives in 2016 In the same year, we estimate that illegal immigrants had a first-time criminal conviction rate of 462 per 100,000 illegal immigrants, 32% below that of native-born Americans. Can all these things be true?
Yeah, look, I don't know the accuracy of their study, whether it's true or not, but what I do know is that we do have crime on the border. I know that drugs are coming across the border. I know that there's human trafficking. I know that there's all kinds of crime, including we have murders, hundreds of murders. And so you just need to talk to a couple of those families and see if they think those statistics from Cato really matter when it's affecting individual lives in our state and in my state.
Yeah, and Sabina, I want to give you a chance to answer that directly. I want to read something after the president's speech last Tuesday night, talking to the country, talking to the nation from the Oval Office about this issue. The Progressive responds this way. The headline is "The Wall, the perfect prop for Trump's racist stagecraft." They say Trump falsely claims, after listing several heinous crimes, that undocumented immigrants are making us less safe, at one point asking, how much more American blood must we shed before Congress does its job? They go on to say several studies have illuminated the opposite is true. The United States would actually be less safe without undocumented immigrants. As somebody who's suffered this directly and personally, I want to give you a chance to respond to that.
It's absolute insanity, because one death is one too many. I don't care if it's 10%, 100%, 50%. And I'm tired of hearing about that illegals commit less crimes. They should commit 0 crimes. This is my son. That's all I have left of him is ashes. And this is not a manufactured crisis. This is real. This affected my life. It destroyed my family. And I'm tired of being insulted and re-victimized by politicians who don't speak up for us. They speak up for illegals, for lawbreakers. I'm a legal immigrant. I stood in line. I didn't drag my son across borders or push him through a fence. And we need to stand behind our president, because he's doing what will save other families from suffering like I do and still do. It's almost 7 years, and it doesn't get any easier.
Sabina, what would you say to people on both sides of the aisle who have not gotten this done, whether it's border protection, whether it's a physical barrier? What is your message about this impasse and the fact that nothing's getting accomplished on that front by either party?
I want each one of those people, whether they like what our president does or not, whether they agree with the wall, imagine their child on a slab in a morgue, and they get to kiss that child or their loved one for the last time because somebody else didn't protect them. That wall will absolutely protect us. It will slow everything down, and we can start cleaning up within the country and get back to normal helping American citizens, not illegals. We need that money for our own people. And as long as we have veterans sleeping out on the street and American kids hungry, I think that's where we need to start. So they need to get with it. And I still challenge Pelosi and Schumer, come meet my son. Meet me face to face. Give me 5 minutes. I just want to mother to mother look you in the eyes and ask you if you want to feel this way.
Well, Sabina, we cannot begin to imagine what you have been through. And we thank you for sharing your story. And hopefully it's going to get through to people across party lines to actually get something done. Mr. Attorney General, thank you for being with us as well.
Thanks for having me on.
Well, President Trump hosting the Clemson University football team at the White House tonight after winning their national championship game. Now the president's critics are calling him racist for serving fast food.
I said, you guys aren't into salads. Burger King, Wendy's, and McDonald's. We have Big Macs, we have Quarter Pounders with cheese, we have everything that I like, that you like.
And later, another federal judge rules against the president's policies, and this time it could once again mean an order of nuns will be forced to foot the bill for contraception they say violates their core religious beliefs. Plus, the Power Panel examines the Steve King demotion. Josh, Charlie, and Jason, who you'll remember was oversight chairman back in the day, they're all with us next. Stick around.
For about 1,000 hamburgers. Burger King, Wendy's, and McDonald's. We have Big Macs, we have Quarter Pounders with cheese, we have everything that I like, that you like. And I know no matter what we did, there's nothing you could have that's better than that.
Okay, you heard them laughing there, but tonight critics are calling President Trump racist for serving fast food to the Clemson University football team following their national championship win. So let's discuss that and more with tonight's Power Panel and Fox News contributor Jason Chaffetz, the communication director for Priorities USA Josh Schwerin, and Fox News contributor Charlie Hurt. Welcome to all of you.
Good to be with you, Shannon. Thanks.
Okay, so Dan Pfeiffer, our audience may know him well. He tweets out this: Trump patting himself on the back because he paid for this, for paying for the cheapest food available for the Clemson football team after the shutdown. He shut down the government, is about as Trump as you can get. In so many ways, Trump is a racist, angry version of Michael Scott. Charlie. By the way, The Office is the best show ever on TV, other than this one.
It is. It is. We've hit rock bottom here. You know, it's funny, actually, when I got the pool report from the White House, I cut and pasted it and sent it to all my kids, all my nephews, and of course they all sent back, oh, this is the best ever. This is what I would like to eat at the White House. So, but, you know, it does underscore sort of a larger problem, I think, with the discourse in Washington today. I mean, and Democrats are far more to blame for it than I think Republicans are. The willingness to talk about, accuse people of being racist for absolutely no, you know, reason whatsoever. There was a time when, you know, we all took racism very seriously, and you didn't accuse somebody of being a racist because they ordered fast food for people. It's insane.
Well, Josh, I'll let you address that. I mean, the president said he did this out of his own pocket because of the shutdown and the lack of staffing and people that would have been there to prepare for these guys. So he thought at least that he was doing something fun that they would like, that he was paying for it. Could he have gotten this right no matter what he did? Or is critics just going to hate him no matter what?
I think this was more a comment on the absurdity of the situation, comparing it to a scene in The Office. And I think the racism was tacked on as like, Michael Scott would have done this in The Office. Oh, and Donald Trump is also angry and racist. And I think there are very good reasons for calling him that. There's a reason Paul Ryan accused him of textbook racism when he said a judge couldn't be biased.
But buying Whoppers?
No, I don't think Dan is saying that this instance was racist. I think he's saying this instance was absurd and belongs in The Office, not in the White House. And also, Donald Trump is angry and racist. He's like Michael Scott, and he's also angry and racist. That's how I read it.
All right, Jason, what do you make of this?
If I went to the White House and they could get a Big Mac, no pickles, no onions, I would love it. That's the first choice on the menu. This is absurd. And it's the Democrats just overreaching every time to try to say it over and over. And it dilutes when something actually serious like the Steve King situation comes up. But the president was doing something fun, and I think everybody there got it and understood it. It's only the Democrats who try to exploit it for political purposes.
Well, let me start with you on the issue of Steve King, because tonight we have learned that he's been stripped of all committee assignments by Republican leadership. He is going to have a tough time with a lot of people calling, including Mitt Romney, for him to resign, among other things. He's pushing back tonight, but I want to read something that we have from the Congressional Black Caucus chair, Karen Bass. She says this: Republicans must now take a hard look in the mirror and firmly decide that they will reject racism in all forms, including standing up to Donald Trump, who, like Steve King, has made a career of racist and outlandish statements that divide our country. Jason?
No, I think I'm proud of the fact that Kevin McCarthy and the House Republicans did the politically difficult thing, and they stripped Mr. King of his committee assignments. That is about the most harsh punishment you can possibly do in the House. It is up to the voters in Iowa to decide whether or not Mr. King continues to represent them. But he is who Iowa sent to Washington, D.C., and to not be on Judiciary and the other two committees, the Ag Committee, it's very important to Iowa. They had the political guts. They took it into their own hands. And the Democrats, I think, are best in this particular instance to let Republicans police their own. And when the Democrats step out of line, they better do the same type of thing that Kevin McCarthy and the Republicans did, because I think they did do the right thing.
Well, Steve King pushing back tonight, saying that basically he was taken out of context. He understands what McCarthy had to do. He doesn't agree with it. But I want to read a bit of his statement tonight, explaining in this hour-long conversation with the New York Times. He says, "We discussed the worn-out label racist and my observation that other slanderous labels have been increasingly assigned to conservatives by the left, who injected into our current political dialogue such terms as Nazi, fascist, white nationalist, white supremacist." He indicates a pause there and then says, "Western civilization, how did that language become offensive? Why did I sit in classes teaching me about the merits of our history and our civilization just to watch Western civilization become a derogatory terms in political discourse today?" He says, clearly, I was only referencing Western civilization classes. No one ever sat in a class listening to the merits of white nationalism and white supremacy. Josh?
I don't know where to start. I think Steve King, and Congressman Chaffetz pointed this out in his op-ed, has been saying this stuff for years. And for years, he's been getting away with it. So I'm glad that Republicans stripped him of his committee assignments today. But the idea that Democrats are injecting Nazis or Klansmen into the conversation for no reason, we all saw Charlottesville. We all saw people marching down the street holding swastikas. And how did the president react? He said good people on both sides, very fine people.
Well,
and
the president, when he was talking about that, was talking about people who had shown up to stick up for the Confederate statues. There are good people who stick up for Confederate statues.
The people who are marching were chanting, "Jews will not replace us," and carrying swastikas.
There may have been some whack jobs in
it was
group, but there were also a group of
white nationalism. They chanted against Jews. They talked about burning a synagogue.
I don't think the president was talking about them when he said
the predominant
that there
group
was
at the march.
Were you there?
I watched it on TV, and I worked for the governor of Virginia, who was there.
Okay, you watched it on TV. I was not there. I don't know, but I do. But I'm from that part of the country. I do know that there are a lot of people from where I am from who believe in standing up for these Confederate monuments, and they are not racist. And when people like you conflate those people with being racist, not only are you denigrating very, very good people, but you're also cheapening the very serious accusation of racism, which is disgusting and appalling.
I'm very comfortable saying that a march filled with Nazis and Klansmen is a group of racists. I'm very comfortable defending that.
We're going to leave it there, gentlemen. We have not solved this, and this is one of the toughest issues our country is facing right now. There's no doubt about that.
And it seems to be solved in most of the country, except in Washington, where you have politicians who are trying to score points off of it.
Which is why hate crimes are up across the country.
Okay, we'll leave it there. We'll continue during the commercial. You'll have to pay for that pay-per-view. Thank you, gentlemen. All right, the iconic portrait of a slain police officer, Natalie Corona, called triggering and racist by students she was sworn to protect. Plus, disturbing new details emerging in the case of 13-year-old Jamie Kloss. Her suspect revealing his alleged plot on his first day in court. Stick around.
And she said, "I am Jamie Kloss."
Yes. She said, "You killed my parents. I want to go home. Help me."
Police officer gunned down last week. But the portrait of Officer Natalie Corona waving the thin blue line American flag was criticized by a University of California student group. The Ethnic and Cultural Affairs Commission called this photo triggering and blatantly anti-black. They have now since deleted the Facebook post. This is a Fox News alert. We're learning horrifying new details tonight in the case of 13-year-old Jamie Kloss, who went missing in Wisconsin last October after her parents were found murdered in their home. The suspect, who allegedly took Kloss captive for 88 days before she escaped, made his first court appearance today. Matt Finn reports tonight from the heroic teen's hometown in Barron, Wisconsin. Matt.
Shannon, late this afternoon, a Wisconsin judge set an exceedingly high $5 million cash bond for 21-year-old Jake Patterson, who's behind bars tonight on 2 counts of first-degree homicide and 1 count of kidnapping. And police are releasing horrifying new details about this suspected killer's confession. Police say 21-year-old Jake Patterson admitted to killing James and Denise Kloss on October 15th so he can get his hands on their 13-year-old daughter, Jamie. The criminal complaint indicates Patterson blasted through the front door of the Kloss home with a shotgun, killed Jamie's father, James Kloss, in the doorway as he was trying to protect his family. Then Patterson hunted through the house until he found Jamie and her mother, Denise, hiding in the bathtub. A portion of the criminal complaint reads, JLC, Jamie, stated that she heard a gunshot and knew her father had just been killed. Jamie stated her mother had her cell phone with her and used the phone to call 911. Jamie stated Patterson broke down the bathroom door and told her mother to hang up the phone. Jamie stated Patterson told her mother to put tape over Jamie's mouth, which her mother did, and then Patterson shot her mother. The criminal complaint indicates Patterson had no connection to the Kloss family, but that one day on his way to a job at a nearby cheese factory that he kept for only 2 days, he randomly saw Jamie getting on a school bus and plotted he was going to take her. Police say Patterson went to great lengths to murder the Kloss couple and kidnap Jamie. Police say Patterson used a popular shotgun in an effort to avoid being detected, put stolen license plates on his getaway car, wiped down the gun and shell casings before using them to remove DNA, shaved his head and face, and put on a ski mask to avoid leaving behind hair. Police say after killing Jamie's parents, he taped her up, dragged her to his car, threw her in the trunk, and took her to this cabin roughly 70 miles away. Pictures from the Daily Mail show some of the inside, including a room in the basement that has stuffed animals in it, a mattress on the ground, and what appears to be purple containers. Jamie told police Patterson made her hide under his bed when people came over, stuffing laundry bins with dumbbell weights against the base of the bed to hide Jamie and make it difficult for her to get out. Jamie says she was too afraid to run because Patterson promised something bad would happen if she tried, and Patterson demonstrated extreme anger, even allegedly hitting her very hard one time when she moved the bins. The young girl finally made a run for it last Thursday, putting on a pair of men's shoes, running in the snow, and walking up to a neighbor.
And she said, I am Jamie Klaas.
Yes. She said, he killed my parents. I want to go home. Help me. So we're kind of scared because he might come.
Yep.
So if the cops could get here soon, we would like.
I have many deputies headed that way. I'm going to keep you on the line.
And Shannon, so far police have not commented on any potential molestation this teen might have endured during her captivity, but the district attorney here says there could be more charges on the way. Shannon.
Matt Finn, thank you very much. President Trump's Attorney General nominee is set to begin Senate confirmation hearings tomorrow. How will he respond to questions about that New York Times report that the FBI was investigating whether or not the President of the United States was a Russian agent?
I guess you could say they're dirty cops. You could say they're dirty cops. I have never seen a turnaround in a bureau or agency like I have with the FBI. They are so embarrassed. I think 12 people now have been terminated. And others, if you look at what's happening, others are going to go.
That is the president responding to a New York Times report which alleges that after President Trump fired FBI Director James Comey, the FBI began investigating whether or not the president was a Russian agent. That report could come up tomorrow during the confirmation hearings for Attorney General nominee William Barr, among many other things. Let's bring in former chief counsel to the House Judiciary Democrats, Julian Epstein, and the former chief nominations counsel to the Senate Judiciary Committee, Greg Nunziata. Great to have you both with us tonight, gentlemen.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, so I want to read something from Senator Chris Coons, a Democrat who sits on the Senate Judiciary Committee, an opinion piece today. He said, the headline is, here are the commitments William Barr needs to make to be an attorney general. He says, I will be looking for unequivocal commitments that he will respect the independence of Mueller's investigation, that he will ensure it receives all of the resources it needs, that he will not overrule Mueller's decisions about indictments and prosecutions, and that he will not allow anyone, including the president, to interfere with or curtail the investigation. Greg, do you think he'll have any issues with that? He's spoken quite a bit to those issues so far.
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends what Senator Coons means by unequivocal commitments. I don't think you're going to hear the Attorney General, past and future Attorney General, commit to specific decisions that he'll make. But he'll lay out some broad principles that he'll apply that I think should get him most of the way to what Senator Coons is asking for. He's already said in his prepared testimony, he said outside of this process that Mueller's a friend of his, someone he respects, and he thinks it's important that his work is allowed to come to a completion and be shared with the Congress and the American people.
Yeah, and apparently he and Mueller go back, he says, as friends for 30 years. I want to read a little bit of his testimony because obviously in putting some of these things out, he's trying to preempt some of the fire that he's going to take tomorrow. But he says this, I believe it's in the best interest of everyone, the president, Congress, and most importantly, the American people, that this matter be resolved by allowing the special counsel to complete his work. The country needs a credible resolution of these issues. If confirmed, I will not permit partisan politics, personal interests, or any other improper consideration to interfere with this or any other investigation. I will follow the special counsel regulations scrupulously and in good faith. And on my watch, Bob will be allowed to complete his work. Julian, Bob there being Robert Mueller.
I think that's good, and I think that goes most of the way there, and I tend to agree. Look, Barr, and I worked a little bit with him when he was the Attorney General in the 90s when I was at the Government Oversight Committee, yeah. And he's a good guy, he's a decent guy, he's by the books, extremely competent. I think where he's going to get into trouble is the memo that he wrote last year where he suggested that the president's firing of Comey in the middle of the Russia investigation should not, as, a priori, be something that should be investigated for obstruction of justice. That's a difficult thing to sustain because that's basically taking the argument that if the facts turn out that the president fired Comey for illegal purposes, for corrupt purposes, that he should not be investigated for obstruction of justice. That's like saying if a president commits a crime, he should never be investigated. He can just keep firing the investigators.
Well, he did caveat this by
position
saying
for
this is
him to
based on what he
sustain.
knows publicly. He didn't say presidents couldn't be pursued for obstruction of justice. He just said based on what he knows.
And he knew very few of the facts, which was the problem. And he seemed to be putting a thumb on the scale against an investigation of obstruction of justice. I think that's where he's got some difficulty.
He's going to get attacked on that, but I think he could defend it and make the memo work for him. I mean, for three reasons. One, it's careful and thoughtful legal work. Two, he says explicitly in that memo that the president can obstruct justice and can be prosecuted or investigated for that in certain circumstances. And third, the memo is clearly animated by a concern for the Department of Justice and the men and women working there. And it shows a real love of the department. He's worried about the president that might be set by an investigation that looked purely political and that wasn't tightly tethered to
and I
the
think
law.
that's a fair way. If he's smart, that's how he will try to thread the needle on that question. On the other hand, he seems to be putting his thumb on the scale against an investigation of obstruction of justice. Most of the American people support the Mueller investigation. Every poll has shown that it supports
And he says
the
he
Mueller
will too.
investigation. Over 35 indictments. There were, during the campaign, there were 19 meetings between Trump and Russian surrogates, Russian intelligence officials, 55
We're gonna retry that whole
contacts.
thing.
There was.
'Cause it's not over. There's a lot that we don't know, but so far, no concrete
questions
evidence
not answered.
of collusion. But we'll see what the Mueller investigation comes up
No
with.
concrete evidence that the president conspired to violate campaign, the computer hacking laws or the disinformation campaign subsequently. There is a lot of evidence of other crimes, however.
Okay, we got to leave it there, but we'll continue to watch and wait, and we'll watch these hearings tomorrow and see just how rough and tumble it gets. As you mentioned, there are several presidential contenders for 2020 who will want to get some camera time, so we'll see. Thank you both.
Thank you.
All right, this is Fox News Alerts. Very strange. We're getting reports of officer-involved shootings in 4 different jurisdictions across the country tonight. That's a lot for any evening to have 1 or 2. We're trying to piece together what we know about these different stories. 3 deputies with the Ector County Sheriff's Office in Texas shot tonight. Those deputies were serving search warrants and were told a suspect fired when they entered and that the suspect there is on the loose. Now, a suspect is in custody, no officers injured after a shooting involved police at an AutoZone in Peoria, Arizona. Frisco, Colorado police. There is an officer-involved shooting in a parking lot near a Whole Foods there, we're told tonight. The suspect is under arrest, and there was an officer-involved shooting in Richland Hills, Texas. The subject, we're told, was transported to the hospital. Police canine also hit and transported for treatment. We will continue to track each of these cases. More news next. Tonight, another blow to President Trump's attempt to try to roll back certain Obamacare regulations. This one involves contraception and employers, including a group of nuns who may be forced to pay for it despite their deeply held religious objections. Late today, Pennsylvania District Court federal judge Wendy Beetlestone issued a nationwide injunction against President Trump's policy that would allow some employers to opt out of mandatory birth control coverage, which they'd pay for women. The new rule would have allowed employers to opt out based on religious or moral objections, such as the Little Sisters of the Poor. But Planned Parenthood says the Trump policy is so broadly written, it could apply to corporations and investor-owned companies who might use the loophole to avoid paying for coverage. Time now for tonight's Midnight Hero. A soldier is being credited with saving the life of an accident victim, and he did it with just a sweatshirt and a ballpoint pen. Check this out. Sergeant Trey Troney happened upon a crashed pickup truck. The driver was trapped inside, so once he got the man free, Sergeant Troney took off his sweatshirt. He used it to stop the flow of blood from the victim's head wound. Well, then the sergeant realized the victim's lung had collapsed, so he knew to use a ballpoint pen to help puncture his chest wall to help the victim be able to breathe then. Well, the man has survived and has since offered to replace the sergeant's sweatshirt. Sergeant Troney, you're a hero in more ways than one. Most watched, most trusted, most grateful you spent your evening with us. Good night from Washington. See you for special.